Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of JFK's World, the podcast where I, JFK, introduce you to entrepreneurs that I know that are doing amazing things in their chosen fields. This week is no exception, and I have the pleasure of introducing everybody to my good friend, Audra Esper. It is episode 007, but Audra and I go way back to the days that I used to work on cruise ships. That's where we first met. And Audra has parlayed her knowledge of cruise ships into an amazing venture that she's taken on called Esper Innovative Solutions, where she provides innovative communication solutions for businesses that she works with. Audra has an amazing story to tell, lots of great information for aspiring entrepreneurs out there. So I hope you enjoy this episode. As always, you can find me at jfksworld.com, jfksworld_podcast on Instagram, or you can become a member of the JFK's World Facebook group. Let's get on to the episode and we'll see you on the other side. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of JFK's World, the podcast where I interview and introduce you to successful entrepreneurs that I know. I am overly excited to have my guest on this episode, number 007, seventh episode, my good friend, Audra Esper. Audra, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I am so excited to be here. This is my first podcast ever.
Oh, awesome. Heck, well, hey, before I was never a guest before I started this. So, hey, we'll get through it together.
It is so cool you are doing this. It is the coolest concept.
Oh, thank you so much. Okay, so I want to let people know where we first met because, again, this is a first. You are someone that I met with when I started working on cruise ships. So for those of you that don't know, I worked on cruise ships for a few years after university. And Audra is someone that I had the pleasure of not only meeting, but working with. And we just, I mean, I'll speak for us. We clicked right away. The inside jokes, the fact that we're both communications majors from university, I'm super excited to have you here, Audra. You're doing some awesome work that I think will bring a lot of value to my listeners, whether they're entrepreneurs themselves, whether they're thinking about becoming entrepreneurs. But yeah, so I want to ask you, can you pick a memory of, us working together, us meeting that you want to share from our time working on cruise ships?
Oh my gosh. So working on cruise ships, and your viewers should know, and you wouldn't say this because you're so modest, but you were the first ever male youth counselor that Norwegian brought on board. And that is a huge deal because before that it was just, it was all women and, it's just a lot of estrogen, and you just made being a youth counselor cool. I mean, being a youth counselor on a cruise ship is cool, but like having you there just, yeah, it was just magical. So my favorite thing that we did was we ended up like, the shoreside office ended up picking a team that was, kind of like the cream of the crop. It was really cool. And you and I were on the team in addition to some other really cool people that were just great. Everyone has a positive attitude. There's no, negative Nellies and whatever. And that's why we were picked to bring out one of our newest ships, but we had to go transatlantic from Miami to Barcelona. So you decided to make a documentary of it. And it was just so much fun. You're at work, but you're making a documentary. So it's sort of like the real world meets cruise ships. And then you made us do confessionals, like in the handicapped bathrooms. And every night, you think about the confessionals and then you put it together and edited it. Well, it was so successful. We kept on going, and you filmed me getting to see the Colosseum in Rome for the first time. It was just overcome. And so that night you filmed me in the bathroom again, just like weeping about how I just didn't deserve this life and to see it. But at the same time, like the fact that you took the time to capture all this, like you captured some of the most formative times in our life. It was unbelievable. And the fact that we had these great friendships, and we're traveling the world together, learning about other cultures, and it's indescribable. So I still have the documentary, which is I think like 3 hours long, and I want to show it to everyone, and they're like, Okay, we're good. But people that haven't done it, they just don't get it, But I get it, and I appreciate it more than you know.
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, like, well, another first for my podcast is you're the first international person I've had, that doesn't live in Canada on the show. But I
Yes.
mean, you hit the nail on the head. Not only did we get to see, amazing places around the world, crossing the Atlantic Ocean on a ship is something I never thought that I would do in my lifetime. And I actually ended up doing it twice. The thing that I always tell people, I wish that all other work settings that people work in throughout their careers or just interact with, I wish they could see how the international crew that work on cruise ships not only like cohabitate and work together, but thrive and make
Oh,
lifelong
yes.
friendships and partnerships, husbands, wives. Like, I just wish that there was more visibility to the like that respect, love, growth for like the human
Yes.
population, because it's
Yes.
there. It's there.
Yeah, your birthday party was at the karaoke joint on the cruise ship, and the captain came to it, who was Greek, and
Yep.
one of the cruise staff guys ran it, who was from Chile. Then we had me and you. Then we had another guy from Britain. Then our waiter was Filipino, and then our bartender was Romanian. And everyone is just so excited to share your birthday, but
Right.
it was just the biggest mixed bowl of gloriousness, realness. It was so special. And like you said, like it's so hard to translate that. Where else would you find that?
Right. It's yeah, it's an experience that I'm, you know, so happy that I did. At the time coming out of university, people were like, "Well, yeah, you should do it. You're young. You'll never get this opportunity again." And now, anyone that asks if that's something that they should do, 100% get that
Oh,
experience. It
yes,
was amazing.
yes, for sure.
But anyways, so now we're a little bit older, I'll say. So we have that experience. So I want to bring attention to you, Audra Esper. So you have a website, and right off the bat, it says helping businesses creatively communicate. So can you
Yes.
just tell us a little bit about what it is that you do?
Sure. So, it's so funny thinking about this day and age, especially, in the whole COVID world and all that, when the world was forced to shut down. And what do you do all day? You look at your phones. So, you could very easily sum it up and just say, oh, well, that's, social media. So you could say, okay, well, helping businesses creatively communicate. What does that mean? Like, do I get a TikTok, which I can do that for you, of course. You need an Instagram, you need a Twitter, you need all that stuff, but it's so much more than that, because businesses now are desperate to find a way to connect with everyone from their organization. So what does that look like? Is it a training video just showing them how to do something quick for 10 seconds that's filmed with a smartphone, instead of just sending them this like 3-page SOP? Well, what if half the people don't speak English? I just tried to learn how to fold a jog stroller. This is impossible. And then I looked at a YouTube video. I was like, oh, I get it. Okay, that's fine. And then there's also things like developing signage. And then there's also things like developing campaigns that change an entire organization's culture. And then there's things like press releases, normal things that go a long way. So communications can take all different shapes and forms. So really, I'll just join an organization and they'll say, okay, well, we really need help with a really cool promotional video. We need someone to help us manage our social media networks. And then I'm sure there'll be other things, but I'm sure there'll be other things turns into an overwhelming amount of things, because when you get into it and you realize, oh wow, we can produce these things really quick. In my world, it's kind of, it's kind of funny. It's almost quantity over quality, because people just want content nonstop. And sometimes the most impactful content is just a goofy home video from a phone, and not this like super professional 30-minute documentary. People don't have time for that anymore.
Right.
So in a nutshell, what I do is basically anything that's a visual communication that can help get their message across. I'm your girl.
Awesome. Providing those services for companies is something that I'm sure a lot of people would be interested in. So, with my guests, I'm always fascinated to see the origin story and kind of how did we get from, growing up to, what did we take in school to, previous jobs to landing on going into business for ourselves. So why don't you tell us your origin story?
So my origin story is I went to the University of Maryland and I got a soccer scholarship, which is like, oh, that's so cool. And then I played soccer for 4 years and it was great. And then it just sort of spit me out into the world with no job experience. My only job experience was soccer camp counselor. So now I'm kind of like, well, shoot, what do I do with this? Well, then I joined SHIPS as a youth counselor. I meet you, become fascinated with the world of videography. And you were a huge part of that. Um, from there, I was able to move to the Shoreside office, which is based in Miami, Florida. And that was always a dream of mine to move to Miami, Florida. Ever since I saw the movie The Birdcage when I was 11, this is the place for me. And it turns out it's exactly like that. It's amazing. Um, so I'm working in the corporate Shoreside office and I'm doing, I don't even know what. At first I started in entry level sales and then they made me a trainer. And then I somehow made the connections to get up into the change management group in the corporate world. So we had all this capital and they knew they wanted to cut costs. They knew they wanted to make improvements. They wanted to, get more efficiencies places. But a lot of people heard that, especially crew on the ships, and they were like, oh my gosh, they're going to cut heads. Oh my gosh, they're going to cut heads. And I said, oh, well, no, I don't want to be associated with something like that because that's not what it is. So I sat down and I said, what is something that people are desperate for? Anytime you want to make yourself valuable to an organization, you just take a step back and be like, well, where's the void? Where's there a need? And you understand the ships, we were just talking about it. It's like 80% non-English speaking crew members. You and I were a minority on board. So now you have Filipinos, Romanians, South Africans, all these people, and you're rolling out all this training to them at a rapid pace, and they're it's not their fault, it's their culture to just nod and say they get it, even though they don't. So as part of change management, I just went up to my boss one day and I just said, hey, you know what? We need training videos. And he was like, Audra, that's too expensive. We can't hire a whole video team. That's going to cost thousands of dollars. I said, you don't need to do that. I said, let me just take a crack at this. I said, this is a training video idea that's not going to be, through marketing. Of course, that's going to be polished and whatever. This is strictly internal. And the end product is that, the crew members understand what to do. So it was something basic like how to pass USPH test in the galley. And the galley was, we had a lot of guys from Central America. There was not a lot of English going on. And we kept having the same mistakes made over and over again. So I said, let me just take a crack at this. If it works, great. If it doesn't work, no harm, no foul. We didn't sign any contracts. So I have my mom's flip HD phone, which is about half the size of this. I reach out to the ship and I say, okay, we're going to come we're going to come film. Could I have a few members of your crew as actors? And could you provide me with the subject matter expert and all that? And they were like, hello, ma'am, Audra. And I'm like, ma'am, I'm like 26, and they're like, hello, ma'am, Audra. We are so excited to have you on board. Will you be bringing a film crew? And then I was like, oh God. I was like, when they see what I'm going to bring on board, they're going to just, oh.
Right.
So I get on board. Oh my gosh, they are all just laughing at me. Like the whole ma'am thing went out the door. And I was like, okay. I said, look, the power lies in editing. I said, so let me film it. Let's make sure the subject matter expert, who at the time was, a director level on board, an officer level. So we film and I say, okay, great. Then I bring it back to their office. And I mean, you understand how easy it is to edit. You just throw it together and then we had no text in it because all text would be in English. So it was me speaking incredibly slowly. And I said, do any of you want to speak? No. You speak. And then we would have it reviewed by the director, officer, all that stuff. But, and as we're doing it, you can tell that they're buying into it. They're like, this is really cool. And they're also feeling kind of like celebrities because they're the ones being filmed in it, and then it's going to go fleet wide. And let's not kid ourselves, it's going to go to their shoreside bosses, people that they've never even met are going to see it. So, we finish it, we get it approved, and then we have a viewing party on board. It was so cute. We had it in the theater. They brought, it's a cruise ship, so they brought popcorn and, rice and, Coke, and we're watching it and they're, oh my gosh, they're so into it. It's so great. And I brought it back and it was a success. And all of a sudden, that the people that were laughing at me like, oh, that'll never work, all of a sudden they're like, well, hey, do you think you could help me film something for my, laundry machine? Well, sure. And then I would have someone else, hey, security, hey, can you help me film a video about how to handle a drunken passenger? So now we have, the dancers and they're being drunk, and then, we're filming it, and oh my gosh, we're having so much fun. It ends up taking on a life of its own. So I end up becoming sort of like my own entity under the change management umbrella, but filming training videos for Norwegian. I'm having a blast. I'm traveling all over the place, filming these training videos. We're building up a massive library, but the whole point of it is modules, so that it's not overwhelming. It's just you pull up an iPad on board. How do you do this? Okay, great. So we call it micro learning. So then after that, I realized, well, I can just do this, and it doesn't have to just be training videos. It can, the sky's the limit. So then I got the guts to just, form my LLC, go out on my own. And I started working now. I work for a shipping company out in Germany. It's not cruise ships. It's called AHTS vessels. It stands for anchor handling tug supply. And we help oil rigs and things like that. But the concept is all the same. You still need training videos. You still need, fun ways to communicate to everyone. So every day it takes on a life of its own. But
Right.
but yeah, the biggest takeaway I would just say is, whether it's video or whether it's whatever, it's, if you're in an organization, maybe you're an entry level person, you just take a step back and look, where is there a void, and where is there something that everybody always complains about? Oh, this happens every time. Okay, well, why? And then if you can attack that before you know it, like that could end up being your mission. And then you just, you take it and run with it.
Sure. No. Yeah, that's amazing advice, because it's, whether it's internal, finding that void, or if you're consumer facing or customer facing, it's what's the void that the customers need.
Exactly. Yes.
So I wanna dive in a little bit, because you glanced over it, that said, I thought, well, I could do this, like on my own type thing. So I want
Right.
to find out, was it a single moment that you decided, what, I'm going to do this? Or, did it take you a few months to kind of build up that, okay, I'm going to leave, the job or the company that I'm with and go out on my own? What was that kind of decision making process like for you?
It was a bit of both. We were living in Miami, and then my husband's job ended up taking us across the state of Florida to Naples. And then life took over. We have a son. We don't have any family around, so then I'm like, okay, maybe I should slow down. We find a sitter, but be around and all that. But I couldn't stop, thinking about it. I couldn't stop filming. And the thing that was kind of cool was I kept getting contacted by ex coworkers that were still in Miami saying, hey, can you help me with this? Hey, can you help me with that? So really it just stumbled into, well, how do we pay you if we do this?
Right.
And I don't know. So I Google, how do you become an LLC? And it just sort of happened by demand. Instead of me being like this go-getter, like I'm going to form my own company. It was formed out of necessity, because otherwise I wouldn't be able to get paid the right way. And then I learned how to set that up. And then after that, I was like, wait a second, I can just keep going with this over in Naples, but it doesn't have to be filming, how to clean a laundry machine on a cruise ship. I mean, not that that's not like scintillating, but I was like, I really want to get involved in things that I care about. So then I took the LLC and I started throwing myself into Special Olympics, which is like my passion. And there's a huge Special Olympics chapter in Naples. So I just went up to them and I said, hey, I do filming, I do social media. I said, do you think there's a need for it? They're like, yeah, fine. They're like, knock yourself out, go nuts. I was like, okay. So I show up and I film, but I'm not filming it like, oh, today we did this. Like I've got my professional equipment, which, oh, that's the other thing, is that Norwegian, once I got going, they're like, Audra, you don't need a flip phone anymore. They're like, they bought me like full on, gear and stabilizers and DSLR cameras. And so I'm learning how to like up my game at the same time.
Sure.
So then when I left Norwegian, I went out and I bought all the same gear. And so I showed up to a Special Olympics event. It was a stand-up paddleboarding race. It was such a cool thing. It was on the beach. And I really tried to focus on like getting into their faces and capturing their emotions, because these kids are just unbelievable and all that. And I made it just very, like, not emotional, but very different.
Sure.
And I sent it to them and I said, hey, if it's okay with you, could I post this on your social media? And it went crazy. People were like, this is so beautiful. Oh my gosh, you have to show up to our golf tournament. You have to show up to our basketball tournament. You have to show up to our fundraiser. I was like, okay, great. And then from that, people came to me and they were like, hey, I have this foundation and this foundation for migrant children. I have this foundation where we're looking for homes for people with intellectual disabilities. I have this wine festival. Can you do this and that? Um, and so they were like, do you have a company name? Do you have a business card? Do you have this and that? And I was like, well, I have an LLC, but I don't have a business card. That's a great point. I'll do that. And so then, I started making all this stuff because, I took the initiative to get involved with Special Olympics. I wasn't expecting to get paid, but because of it, I got the connections to, get paid and start to do like actual work around the community. So I'm sorry, that was like the longest answer ever, but
Oh, that's okay. It's important to share because everyone's journey is different, right? There's
yeah,
people that they know from, when they're in elementary school, what they want to do, what they want to be. And
yes,
then it comes to people just kind of stumble into it, and there's everything in between.
right.
So I want to switch gears to, we're now over a year into the COVID-19 pandemic.
Yes.
Something that I've been asking as I've started my podcast during the pandemic is I've asked all of my guests, how has COVID-19 made you adapt, your business model or what you do? Because you just mentioned you were going out to events and filming, and obviously, you know, that isn't really happening right now. So can you tell us a little bit about, some of the skills that you've had to adapt for your business to remain, working?
For sure. No, that's a great point, because now all of a sudden you're cut at the kneecaps and you can't go out and film and, get really close and capture emotions and all that. So you have to think creatively. So really, the biggest thing that the biggest takeaway that I got from COVID-19 was, just out of the blue, one of my best friends from cruise ships, who you didn't meet, but she just reminds me so much of you. She works for the shipping company in Germany, and she reached out to me and she was just like, are you interested in doing some work for us? But in my mind, I'm like, how is this going to work? Because even when the crisis is over, they're in Germany and I'm here in East Greenwich, Rhode Island. Like, how am I just going to step on board a ship, film and all that? And how do you do that? At all. So the really cool thing about COVID is now people weren't sure about remotely. People weren't sure about working remote. People weren't sure about, what is that going to look like? And it forced the issue. So they would have never been open to having a communications person like myself in a 6-hour time zone away in the United States. But now, they're in Germany, but their CEO is in Scotland and our parent company is in Denmark. And here I am in Rhode Island. And we've thrown together videos completely just through Microsoft Teams, or, they link me up to their Dropbox, or I reach out to the fleet of our ships and I leverage the talent that's out there. I mean, everybody carries a smartphone these days. So I've had crew members from Rio de Janeiro send me a picture from their smartphone that they took. And then I just go on and, Photoshop and edit it, and we post it to our Instagram, the next day. And people are like, wow, that's so cool. And then other people are sending videos in, and, we can throw stuff together. And it's funny because I personally believe that authentic videos and pictures are making more of an impact these days than professional. So, like, for example, if I'm looking at a restaurant, I would rather go to their Yelp page and see the actual pictures of the restaurant, as
Right.
opposed to going on their web page and seeing the professional pictures. So for my world, I thought it was going to be maybe debilitating is a good word, but it's actually been the opposite, just because the world is changing so much that it's changing with the times. So as long as I can adapt and change with the times and just be open to change, then I think the sky's the limit.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah. We've all had to learn how to adapt. And for entrepreneurs, especially, you can't rely on, working for a company that's, able to kind of pay your way through this
Mhm.
pandemic, and but you already have the knowledge of these are the skills that I bring, and as you mentioned, these are the things that I know I can learn, right?
Right.
I can
Yes.
adapt and I can grow through these times.
Yes.
But let's sidestep the entrepreneur life, because I know that there's a work-life balance that everyone, should have. So what interests do you have outside of working and running your business? Are there any random hobbies that people should know about that you have going on?
Yeah, well, I love soccer. I still, I'm certainly not the player that I was, but I'll play pickup, and I just find it's such a great way to meet new people, especially when you're new to an area. It's honestly a great way to network, especially when you live in a small town. So I'll play a couple times a week, and I coach my son's team. I love stand up paddle boarding. I still love, even though it's my job. I still love just going out and filming anything as a documentary that you can put out on Instagram and all that. I love doing photography. So really just anything outdoors where you can capture the beauty, even if it's silly, even if it's like a turkey on the road. I'm like, oh my God, this is beautiful. Look at the foliage,
Right.
and just taking time to appreciate the little things. That's been really cool. And we just moved to Rhode Island after, my gosh, a decade and a half in Florida. So just readjusting to the seasons has been, it's every day. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing. I forgot all this existed.
Right. Yeah, I mean, when you say, okay, so I'm going to go back to your soccer skills for a second. When you say you don't have the skills that you once did. So what I witnessed firsthand, and going back to cruise ships, is we were youth counselors, and we would have teen versus youth counselors soccer matches. And Audra was the type of player, everyone, that she would, deke around all of the teens on the other team, and then like pass it to someone like me for us to score to make us
Yeah.
feel good. He was the one that was dribbling, through their legs, through her legs, just doing all kinds of crazy tricks and stuff. So, to play at the elite level that you did, obviously for Maryland, University of Maryland, I still think that you're probably better than most of the people that you're up against.
Well, thank you. It's that was also a decade and a half ago. Oh my God. So, but thank you. I'm glad you have that memory like imprinted and your mind
Yes,
just
I
keeps that memory.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, I scored more goals than I would have if you weren't on our team. So
Yeah. No, that's
okay.
actually a great point though, because I was so convinced my whole life, I was so convinced that if I worked hard enough, I would be able to be a professional soccer player. And so that's what my whole childhood was playing soccer. And it was, the goal was to do that. So then, I have this big thing, gain disguised as lost and all that. But, we finished my soccer career, and it's soccer's over. And all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, who am I? Like this whole identity crisis, which I'm sure that, a lot of former athletes go through. We had a game after it was all over, and it was Maryland against a women's pro team that was local to the area. And I'm like 20 pounds overweight. Yeah, I haven't played soccer in a couple months. Like me and all my friends who were seniors were squeezing 4 years of college into 4 months.
Yes.
So, I mean, you can imagine it, just so many bad decisions. But then they said to us, hey, do you want to play in this game? I said, sure. But I'm playing in the game, but I don't have any pressure on me because I'm not trying to win a starting spot. I'm old, my career's over. Well, I had the best game of my life. Who knew? And it turns out when you're not putting so much pressure on yourself, you're actually really good. So then the coach came to me after the game, and he was like, hey, would you want to play on our team for the next game? A lot of our national team players are going to be in Sweden or something at a tournament. I was like, what? I said, do you really? Okay. So then I got a chance to play professionally for one game for 12 minutes. The next day, the league folds. It's over. But I got to play, which is so
Wow. Yeah.
amazing. And I was like, okay, so if I never play soccer again, I could be like, okay, for 12 minutes, I achieved my dream. And that was that. And a part of me still wonders, like, what if? But then going on to cruise ships, like, soccer ended up being like the biggest connection maker ever because everyone's international. So now all of a sudden these officers are taking you seriously because you're good at soccer. It shouldn't be like that, but it is. And then same thing like ashore, when you're working in an international industry, all of a sudden soccer becomes this international language and like a leg up because all of a sudden people are like, well, will you play on our team and this and that? And all of a sudden you're like, oh, wow, soccer actually helped me in my career and helped me go farther than I ever thought I would if the whole professional thing, had worked out. So it's funny how life works.
Wow. You know what? I apologize. I don't think I knew that story about being like playing in one game professionally.
Oh
That's,
yeah.
yeah, that's awesome.
Oh, it
Yeah.
was great. I put it on every resume. Whatever people are like, we don't care, but
Yeah.
but I'm like, I'll be able to tell my grandkids.
Well, I don't want to keep you for too much longer, but I think I told you before we started filming, you know, I have basically two things that I want to get out of this podcast journey that I'm on. And the first one is to obviously introduce my audience to the entrepreneurs that I know, because anyone that's listened to this podcast so far, I think they'd agree that, you have a amazing backstory of experiences to share. But the second part of it is I want to make sure that people that are going through it, like yourself, becoming an entrepreneur, taking that step, that we bring value to people that are looking to become an entrepreneur and kind of have that itch and they're not sure because they're whatever the reason is holding them back. So if you could spend a few minutes, just what advice would you have for other entrepreneurs, aspiring entrepreneurs? What advice can you share with them that can maybe help them get over that hurdle?
That so it's funny that is a great question. You should run a podcast. No, that's a great question because it's almost like my answer is going to like combine everything we just said. That's like perfect. Okay, so the answer is going to combine soccer with void and a need and all that stuff. So I mentioned earlier, and this is if you're trying to get anywhere in life, this formula has worked for me every single time because if you're doing something for the right reasons, then things will flow to you like the salmon of Capistrano. If you're doing something in the hopes that you'll get recognized, I think you'll find that people can see that, especially in this day and age. So back to ships. My dream was to move to Miami corporate from ships. How do you do that? How do you let them know, hey, I'm really interested without self-promoting too much and all that? So I have this in the back of my mind, but our ship started going to Central America. And the guys I was playing soccer with said to me, hey, Audra, there are some kids that play ashore. Do you want to come play soccer with them? And this was in Guatemala, so it was pretty rough. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, let's do it. We went and we had an absolute ball with these kids. But then we're looking at them, and none of them have shoes. So that's something they need. It's a void. So then we come back and we come back on board and we say, well, they don't have shoes. What do we do? Okay. So then we put out a whole APB to the crew members. Hey, do anyone have extra shoes? Next week we show up, we've got shoes, okay, great. All of a sudden they're like, okay, we have more shoes, more shoes. Now all of a sudden you've made the connections on board, whether it's through soccer, whether it's through just, helping someone out, being a good person. People start to rally around you if you are uniting yourself, if you're attaching yourself to a cause and it's a good cause. Now all of a sudden we have people from around the country sending us shoes, soccer supplies, other crew members that, hey, I don't have shoes, here's $5, can you go to Walmart? Then we have the embarkation clearance officer helping us fill out the customs form so we can offload it in a different country. Then you have the food and beverage manager who's from Hungary who plays soccer with us on board. I can't contribute, but I can send you 3 of my guys, a tray and all that stuff. And okay, great. So then all of a sudden it moves into orphanages and this and that. And it just took on a life of its own. And in doing that, I made all these connections with Shoreside because they were like, how are you doing this? This ship is getting like all these wonderful reviews and all these human PR stories and all that. And then I ended up being able to go to Shoreside because of all of that, as opposed to me writing them and being like, hey, I want a job. Like,
Right.
what? So then the same thing with Special Olympics. And in Naples, like all those other things, you just find something where you're like, hey, their social media isn't really that great. Let me see if I can take the time to help them out. I was not expecting to get paid for it. I just thought it would be fun. It would be a nice thing to do, whatever. I got so many connections that ultimately forced me to start my business and taught me in a safe space, if you will, how to do it so that if I didn't look silly because I'm, getting myself started, and all these people are like, we don't care what your business card looks like. We just want you to come film this and help us with that. And then same thing with this new job. You've got people around the world that you've never met face to face, but when you're trying to do the right thing and you're establishing the right connections and you're establishing, really great relationships with people around you. So you find the void, find the need, you try to get a solution, and you rally the right people around you. I mean, just watch what happens, especially if it's genuine. So whatever industry you're in, I would encourage you, don't always go after a buck, don't always go after the money. Take time to find something that's a lot deeper, and that's when it becomes a marathon, not a sprint.
Right. That's amazing. I think that ties so well into actually my last guest, Shannon. She said something that I think resonates, especially with your story about how quickly things can build. It was that, people are often, they admit that they're afraid to fail, but
Yeah.
they're also afraid of success.
Yes.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, and I think that, just people, it's like, well, what if it doesn't work out? But the other is, what if something, because like you said, you're passionate about it. So you're devoting all of this positive energy to it, and you're, you know, researching how to do things you don't know how to do, and you're putting yourself out there and making yourself vulnerable. That, yeah, what if it snowballs? Right?
Right.
What if it
Yes.
grows? And that's where the opportunity really gets exciting.
And it's the answer.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be so complicated. It can just be, okay, well, you're not sure how to do something. We'll take the time to learn how to do it. It's not that hard. There's so many resources out there now.
Yes. Awesome. Okay. So if people want to, learn more about you, learn more about what you do, where can they get a hold of you? Where can they reach out?
So you can reach out to me on my website, www.audraesper.com. And then there's a whole contact section there. And I would look forward to hearing from you. Or if you just want to say hi.
Excellent. Well, Audra, thank you so much. It has been a pleasure. I appreciate, you taking the time to be on the podcast with me. And hopefully, as this podcast goes, we can have a follow-up episode to see what more fun and exciting things you're up to.
I would love that. That would be great. And thank you for having me. This was great. I
Awesome.
love what you're doing.
Thank you. All right, Audra, have a good one.
All right. You too.
Bye. And there you have it, another episode in the books. See, I told you Audra had a great story to tell and a lot of great information. If you want to find out more about Audra or get into contact with her, you can always visit her at audraesper.com. And for more information about my show and to see past episodes, please don't hesitate to visit jfksworld.com, check out the YouTube page, check us out on Instagram at jfksworld_the podcast, or join the Facebook group JFK's World. Thank you once again, everyone, for tuning in. This has been JFK's World, and thank you for letting me be a part of yours.